Turn this off. Okay. Section 3 continued. We got cut off. Republican reforms in the South. The newly elected Republican governments in the South quickly instituted a number of reforms. They repealed the black codes and made many more state offices elective. They established state hospitals and institutions for orphans, the hearing and visually impaired, and the mentally ill. They rebuilt roadways, railways, and bridges and provided the funds for the construction of new railroads and industries in the South. They also established a system of public schools. The Republican reforms did not come without cost. Many state governments were forced to borrow money and impose high property taxes to pay for the repairs and new programs. Many property owners, unable to pay these new taxes, lost their land. Although many Republicans wanted to help the South, others were corrupt. One Republican governor admitted accepting more than $40,000 in bribes. Graft, key word there, were gaining money illegally through politics, was common in the South, just as it was in the North at the time, but it gave Southern Democrats another issue would help them regain power in the 1870s. African American communities. In addition to their efforts on the political stage, African Americans worked to improve their lives in other ways during Reconstruction. Many sought to gain an education and establish their own thriving communities. A desire to learn. Once they were freed, many African Americans wanted to get an education. In the first years of Reconstruction, the Freedmen's Bureau, with the help of Northern charities, established schools for African Americans across the South. By 1870, some of the 4,000 schools and 9,000 teachers, half of them African American, taught 200,000 formerly enslaved people of all ages. In the 1870s, Reconstruction governments built a comprehensive public school system in the South, and by 1876, about 40% of all African American children, roughly 600,000 students, attended school in the region. Several African American academies offering advanced education also began operating in the South. These academies grew into an important network of African American colleges and universities, including Fisk University in Tennessee and Atlanta University and Morehouse College in Georgia. Churches and social organizations. With the same determination they showed in pursuing an education, formerly enslaved people across the South worked to establish their own churches. Religion had long played a central role in the lives of many African Americans. With the shackles of slavery now gone, the building of churches quickly began. Churches served as the center of many African American communities. They housed schools and hosted social events and political gatherings. In rural areas, church picnics, festivals, and other activities provided residents with many of their recreational and social opportunities. In many communities, churches often acted as unofficial courts by promoting social values, settling disputes among residents, and disciplining individuals for improper behavior. African Americans also established thousands of other organizations to help and support each other. These organizations range from burial societies and debating clubs to drama societies and trade associations. At the same time these changes were taking place, African Americans faced intense resentment from many Southern whites. Many Southerners also despised the black republicanism governments, which they believed vindictive Northerners had forced upon them, the Ku Klux Klan. Unable to strike openly at the Republicans running their states, some Southerners organized secret societies. The largest of these groups was the Ku Klux Klan, started in 1866 by former Confederate soldiers in Pulaski, Tennessee. The Klan spread rapidly throughout the South. Its goal was to drive out the Union troops and the carpetbaggers and regain control of the South for the Democratic Party. Hooded, white-robed Klan members rode in bands at night, terrorizing supporters of the Republican governments. They broke up Republican meetings, drove Freedmen's Bureau officials out of their communities, burned African American homes, schools, and churches, and attempted to keep African Americans and white Republicans from voting. Republicans and African Americans formed their own militia groups and fought back. As the violence perpetrated by both sides increased, one African American organization sent a report to the federal government asking for help, saying, "We believe you are not familiar with the description of the Ku Klux Klan's riding nightly over the country, going from county to county, and in the county towns spreading terror wherever they go by robbing, whipping, ravishing, and killing our people without provocation. We pray you will take some steps to remedy these evils." The Enforcement Acts. The Ku Klux Klan's activities outraged President Grant and congressional Republicans. In 1870 and 1871, Congress passed 3 enforcement acts to combat the violence in the South. The first act made it a federal crime to interfere with a citizen's right to vote. The second put federal elections under the supervision of federal marshals. The third act, also known as the Ku Klux Klan Act, outlawed the activities of the Klan. Local authorities and federal agents acting under the Enforcement Acts arrested more than 3,000 Klan members throughout the South. Southern juries, however, convicted only about 600, and fewer still served any prison time. Okay, Section 4. Reconstruction collapses. Our key terms: sin tax, Horace Greeley, whiskey ring, Panic of 1873, Compromise of 1877, tenant farmer, sharecropper, furnishing merchant, crop lien, debt peonage. Ethelbert Barksdale could hardly contain his excitement as the 1875 election campaign in Mississippi wound down. For the past several years, Democrats had steadily regained power throughout the South, winning back various local and state offices from Republicans through political organizing and through intimidation and harassment of African Americans and other Republican supporters. Barksdale, the editor of the Weekly Clarion, a Democratic Mississippi newspaper, now watched with joy and anticipation as Democrats prepared to recapture numerous political offices in his state. To Barksdale and many other white Southerners, the efforts by Democrats to regain political control was nothing less than a revolution to free the South from despised Republican rule. When a government is oppressed with very bad rulers and national affairs are tending towards corruption, the people bear these grievances for a long time, hoping that a reformation may come, he wrote on the eve of Election Day. The Grant Administration. As commander of the Union forces, Ulysses S. Grant had led the North to a victory in the Civil War. His reputation had carried him into the White House in the election of 1868. Unfortunately, Grant had little experience in politics. He believed that the president's role was to carry out the laws and leave the development of policy to Congress. This approach pleased radical Republicans in Congress, but it left the president weak and ineffective when dealing with other issues. Eventually, Grant's lack of political experience helped to divide the Republican Party and to undermine public support for Reconstruction. The Republicans split. During Grant's first term in office, the Republican-controlled Congress continued to enforce Reconstruction. At the same time, Congress expanded the programs that it had introduced during the Civil War to promote commerce and industry. It kept tariffs high, tightened banking regulations, promised to repay its debt with gold and not paper money, and increased federal spending on railroads, port facilities, and the national postal system. The Republican Congress also kept in place the taxes on alcohol and tobacco that had been introduced as emergency measures during the war. These taxes, nicknamed sin taxes, key term there, helped the government pay off the bonds that had been issued to pay for the Civil War. Democrats attacked these Republican economic policies, arguing that they benefited the wealthy, such as government bondholders, at the expense of the poor, who paid most of the sin taxes. They argued that wealthy Americans were gaining too much influence in Grant's administration. Some Republicans, known as liberal Republicans, agreed with the Democrats. They were concerned that men who were in office to make money and sell influence were beginning to dominate the Republican Party. The liberal Republicans tried to prevent Grant from being nominated for a second term. When that failed, they left the Republican Party in 1872 and nominated their own candidate, Horace Greeley, key term, the influential newspaper publisher. To attract Southern support, the liberal Republicans promised to pardon nearly all former Confederates and to remove Union troops from the South. And as a result, the Democratic Party, believing that only a unified effort could defeat Grant, also nominated Greeley. Despite the split in his own party, Grant won the election easily. Scandals mar Grant's second term. During Grant's second term, a series of scandals badly hurt his administration's reputation. In one scandal, Grant's Secretary of War, William Belknap, was found to have accepted bribes. Key term, William Belknap, was found to have accepted bribes from merchants operating at army posts in the West. He was impeached, but resigned before the Senate could try him. Then, in 1875, the Whiskey Ring, key term, the Whiskey Ring scandal broke. A group of government officials and distillers in St. Louis cheated the government out of millions of dollars by filing false tax reports. It was reported that Orville E. Babcock, Grant's private secretary, was in this group, although the charges were never proven. Panic of 1873. In addition to dealing with political scandals, Grant and the nation endured severe economic crisis that began during Grant's second term. The turmoil started in 1873 when a series of bad railroad investments forced the powerful banking firms of J. Cook and Company to declare bankruptcy. A wave of fear known as the Panic of 1873, key term, quickly spread through the nation's financial community. The panic prompted scores of smaller banks to close and the stock market to plummet. Thousands of businesses shut down and tens of thousands of Americans were thrown out of work. The scandals in the Grant administration and the deepening economic depression hurt the Republicans politically. In the 1874 midterm elections, the Democrats won control of the House of Representatives and made gains in the Senate. These newly elected Democrats immediately launched investigations into these scandals, further embarrassing Grant and the Republicans. Now here is where our part 3 video will pick up. And have a good one, Colin.